What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Mark's Remarks. I'm your host, Mark Radigan, here as always. I hope everyone is looking forward to this upcoming holiday season. I know I am. Winter break is starting in just a couple days here at the University of Rhode Island. But in the meantime, I'm happy to be bringing you an interview, the first of a couple interviews from a historic program here on campus, one that had an incredible season this past few months. I'm talking about Rhody football. URI football went 11-3 this season, making it to the second round of the FCS college football playoffs for the first time since the 80s. Beat Central Connecticut State at home in the first round for Rhode Island's first playoff win since the 80s. Going 11-3, I mean, just an unbelievable season for an unbelievably talented group. But today, I'm joined by one of the main reasons for this team's great success this season. A Rhode Island native, a Providence native, and a hero and an idol to Rhode Island fans near and far. I'm joined by wide receiver one for the Rhode Island Rams, Marquis Buchanan. Marquis, how we doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marquis, and I mean, just congratulations on an excellent season. You really balled out this year, and it's just so incredible to see this team continue to make the steps forward that's asked of them in order to get to this position, because this team has just been trending in the right direction for the past few years. This has not been a fluke season. This was a season that really took a lot of time and dedication and effort to really materialize. But before we get into that, I want to talk about more of your personal journey. A graduate from Classical High School in Providence, I want to learn about how you got into football when you were young, what your high school football career was like, and then ultimately what led you on the path to playing college football.
So when I was I started playing football around 7, like tackle football around 7. My mom had signed me up with my uncle for the Mount Hope Cowboys. When I first started there, I was pretty upset because I wanted to play with my brother. My older brother played for the Edgewood Eagles, so I was upset. But like when I first got there, they put me in a position to. They seen how fast I was, so they put me in a position to really go out and score. So the coaches, they was hard. So like coming here, like coaches being hard. Like coaches been hard on me my whole life, so it's been pretty real easy with that. And as I got older, my uncle started coaching me, and then when I was about 13, Coach Renz, he played for LaSalle. He went to Bryant. He really put me in a position, like, that's when I started playing wide out a little bit more. He put me in a position to go out there and start catching passes. So once I got to classical with Coach McCall, he kind of only gave me two choices. You're either going to play quarterback or you're either going to play wide receiver. So I went out there, I played wide out. He made sure my footwork was right, He basically taught me how to play receiver, coming from a kid who was just an athlete. So playing college football, I played basketball too, so I didn't really know until I got the first offer from URI. So then I was like, all right, looks like I'm going to go down the football path. And, that's when I really had to start to dial it up a little bit to really get ready for what college football got to bring. And once I got here, they embraced me right away. They told me what the plan was, and I just bought into the plan, and that's how we got here.
And so getting to classical, that must be an interesting position where you have the opportunity to either play quarterback or wide receiver, two of the most important positions on the field, but two drastically different positions. You talked about how your coach kind of taught you how to play wide receiver. Did you have any preference when you were actually going into classical, or were you kind of just open to whatever opportunities the coaching staff would throw at you in order for you to get on the field?
I mainly played running back in Pop Warner. So like when I was going there, I didn't even think those two were an option. But then I realized, Sam Badu, he played running back. So it was like I'm not really gonna be here to be a backup. So it kind of caught me off guard when he asked me only those two positions. I kind of just said wide out just to like spit it out. It's kind of just something quick. But I mean, I think I made the right choice, really. So playing wide out, there's 3, 4 people out at a time. I started off as a backup my freshman year, and then as the year went on, the quarterback play wasn't doing good, so we moved one of our wideouts that played quarterback the year before back to quarterback, and then that slid me into a starting role from there. So yeah, I think it was a great choice.
Clearly it was. I mean, you've been able to make this entire career out of that one sort of position change. And so as you started to make a name for yourself at Classical and started to ingrain yourself more into the starting fold with the football program, at what point did you have that realization that you wanted to take this to the next level and you wanted to go play in college? Was that something that you and your family had always thought of when you were playing Pop Warner when you were little, or was it something that you didn't fully realize until you actually started to get consistent snaps and start scoring touchdowns in high school?
So when I was younger, I always said I want to go to the NFL. You know, that's everybody's dream goal. But when I got there, before I even like touched on to putting pads on at class school, Coach McCall took me on a visit to Boston College. So I was like, all right, this dude's legit. Like I haven't even put a snap yet down, and I'm already on a college visit. So that already was ingrained in my brain as a freshman. But as I just got older, you know, I got closer to graduating, and I started going to more camps. I was like, all right, I got to get to college. Like, this is the goal now. Like, I need to get a scholarship and play football for free in college. So that was the goal early on.
And you also played basketball at Classical, didn't you?
Yes.
And so how was it, what was it like balancing having to play football and play basketball at the same time when you're trying to also pursue football much more seriously at this point? Because with the amount of hours that both sports entail in terms of practice and conditioning and so on, I got to imagine that had to have been a little strenuous for you, at least during that brief window in the winter where basketball and football overlap as you get deeper into the postseason.
Yeah, so McCall, he'd rather me not play basketball, but he kind of, since he knew I wasn't going to stop playing, he kind of used it as an advantage for the college coaches, like to show off my ability to, you know, run, jump, and move the way I do on the court. So balancing it, it was all right because I kind of did it my whole life, kind of just balanced football and basketball. So it wasn't too bad, but it definitely took a toll on the body a little bit. But, you know, once basketball was over, I went straight to football. Once football was over, I went straight to basketball. But they coincided. You know, they helped me in the long run anyway.
And there are a lot of really competitive football and basketball programs at the high school level in Rhode Island. Classical being one of them, Hendricken being another big one in Providence. Sebastian Thomas coming in from Hendricken to come play basketball at URI. There's always that conversation about how the two of you are those two true home state heroes, exemplified by that really cool graphic that we saw, the Justin Jefferson, Anthony Edwards remake, that remake of that old one from the Timberwolves and the Vikings years ago. I mean, what was that rivalry like for you being at Classical, going up against Bishop Hendricken in different sports? Because that, from what I've gathered, as someone who's not from Rhode Island, being sort of an implant here coming to URI, I've learned a little bit about just how serious those rivalries are, because both of those programs are exceptionally good. They've got great legacies, and it means a lot to the people up north in this very small state.
So I didn't really, like, basketball-wise, I didn't understand the rivalry until I really stepped on the court as a sophomore. That's when I really, like, played basketball for the first time at Hendricken. You know, we played at Classical, and that's when, like, the home crowd, you know, tickets were sold out, people were standing. That's when I really understood, like, yo, this is the big game feeling that everybody be talking about against Hendricken or LaSalle or Central. Like, those big games, like, you don't know it's a big game, but just by how many people are coming out. You got people from other schools skipping their game to come to that game just for that, and it's intense, you know. And when it came down to winning, you know, it's really just who's the better player. As he had came out, you know, he started off slow, but he started, you know, picking it up the way he does now. So, I mean, but that feeling in the gym when all the crowd's just yelling and screaming nonstop for 4 straight quarters is an unreal feeling.
What about football? Was there as crazy of a rivalry between Classical and Hendricken for football too?
So Classical and Hendricken, they play 2 different divisions just based off the size. Like, Hendricken's kids are way bigger than Classical kids would be. So those weren't 2 rivals. I was more like Hendricken and LaSalle.
Mm-hmm.
Classical doesn't really have a rival per se because they're always in and out of divisions based off how many kids they got or how well they can perform.
And so with that then, having played basketball and playing in those competitive environments, do you feel that being in those situations helped enhance your overall competitiveness and your overall game when you transferred it back over to football, being in those high-pressure moments, knowing that every single play counts when you didn't necessarily get that as consistently when you were playing for the football team?
Definitely. You know, you just kind of learn how to tune the crowd out, but listen to what you need to. So on a dead ball, like, that's when I really listen to the crowd. But once the game starts, I kind of try to tune them out and just keep my competitive drive. I'm competitive from start to finish, no matter win, losing, getting blown out, blowout. I'm trying to be competitive all the way through. Like I'll try to give 100% as much as I can until I get subbed out or the game's over.
And that clearly shows with how your style of play at URI. And to kind of lead into that, you've as you got through your time at Classical, you're starting to think about just what the college game may have to offer you. You talked about taking that visit up to Boston College to get a taste of what that sort of life is like. And so, what was your initial college recruitment process like for you? Were there a number of teams that were reaching out to you to go and visit, or were you talking to a bunch of different coaches at different levels? And just how did you end up choosing URI?
So my recruitment started off well. My like end of my sophomore year, going into the COVID junior year, like it was high. Like I had a bunch of FBS schools interested. All I had to do was go to camps and ball out. But I want to say I went to a Duke camp, and I got hurt, and I kind of just didn't go to camps for the rest of that summer. So the interest kind of just like died down a little bit. URI was interested since I was a beginning of my sophomore year, so they wanted to call all the way through. But so after the first game of my junior year, I had went crazy, and then Coach Flanagan had called me, said he was gonna offer me a scholarship. That was my first offer ever, so that was an amazing feeling. And then a couple weeks down the line, Sacred Heart called me, said they was gonna offer me, and then like the end of season of my senior year, the UNH had called me, and they said it was gonna offer me, but I never went on a visit to UNH because I didn't have enough time really. I only had like a few weeks left until I had to commit. So I went on a visit up to Sacred Heart and URI on back-to-back days just to get it out the way right before signing day. And I just felt more comfortable at URI. That's what it came down to. I was more comfortable, you know. They kind of just, it was easier to connect with them off the rip. As soon as I got on campus, it was just easy. Coach Flanagan, I picked me up from my house for my visit. So Coach Varner, who was the wide receiver coach at the time, he came with him, and you know we just clicked instantly.
So wait, you were saying that you were comfortable when after you got down to campus, you met with all the coaches and you got a feel for how the program was. You said that you felt comfortable. That's something that I've heard from a lot of players when they went down and did their visit with URI. Just that you had that overwhelming feeling of just like welcoming and comfortability, that it just like it was a very positive overall environment. And I'm curious, when you were going through your college recruitment process, was staying close to home big for you, or were you kind of just like seeing what offers came to you and you were going to choose from there? Did you have any sort of areas that you were particularly looking at that you wanted to go to?
Uh, I know I wanted to stay on the East Coast, so early in my recruitment, Florida was interested, Arizona was interested, UMass, BC, UConn, like all those, you know, all the East Coast schools. So Florida really piqued my interest when they said it was interesting because, you know, it's Florida and they're on the East Coast, they're not too far. But, you know, once they withdrew, I kind of just, like, weighed my options out on, you know, which conference is better. You know, Cigar's not too far, but, you know, the NEC's not as good as the CAA, so that played a factor. And the URI, you know, they're closer, so that also played a factor in it. But it didn't play too much, but once it, like, came down to it, it did. It just so happened to play a factor. I didn't think it played as much of a factor, but that's just how it turned out.
And so then after you officially committed, you signed all the paperwork, you kind of get into that zone. It's like, all right, you know what? The pressure's off me. I'm done. I've committed to a school now. Now I can just focus on my overall game. At that point, after you committed, did you feel that you were able to play with a lot more, say, confidence or just comfortability, knowing that, all right, you don't have to go extra crazy to try and show out for these recruits and scouts and so on. You've already made that decision. They trust you. They've already offered you. So now you know where you're going to end up, so you can just play your own style of game.
So my football season happened to actually be over. We had we had won our championship game. It was like late November. We played our Thanksgiving game like the week after, so we was kind of done. I was kind of just sitting for 2 weeks trying to figure out what I want to do. It actually drove me insane. That time of day was so far. But and I had basketball right after, so it kind of just motivated me in basketball. I had to go even harder, knowing that this is probably the last time I'm gonna put on any type of basketball uniform and play in front of a crowd. So I really just took that personally and went hard every single game.
Was there any part of you that wanted to try and pursue basketball in college as well, or was that just something that you were like, you know what, this is fun, but football is clearly my thing?
I wanted to. I talked to Coach Flem right before I came here my freshman year. He said if everything was like straight grades wise, I'd be able to play. But I just never, I talked to Sebastian a little bit, but once he left, it kind of just died out. It's kind of just a died dream. I was gonna try, but it just never went through.
My gosh, the marketing and just the fandom that would have ensued if you and Bassie were on the court together for the Rams, that would have just been unbelievable. Because someone threw some clips of some highlights from you playing basketball at Classical on Twitter the other day, and I was looking, I was like, all right, this guy can hoop. He would do a job for Coach Miller. I think we can all say that.
I feel like if I had like a month to just play basketball, I feel like I could still go out and do it. But I mean, that would just have to be a whole separate conversation with the coaching staff.
Oh yeah, totally. But clearly you didn't make the wrong decision here in terms of how your career in Rhode Island has transpired since you ultimately showed up in 2022. And I mean, to get to that point, as you first arrived at URI, 2022, you didn't appear in any games, you redshirted. What was that initial set of months like going through summer camp and then ultimately around when they decided to redshirt you during your first season? Just what was that overall feeling like, getting used to campus, getting used to being a part of the college program, and how you acclimated yourself to life at URI?
I was frustrated because I know I can go out there and play. Just that's just how I am, the competitive in me. I was very frustrated just sitting on the sideline. When it goes to the end of the season, practice kind of just gets you kind of just get through practice, especially when you're not playing. So I was frustrated going back and forth with the coaching staff saying they're trying to get me in, but obviously that never happened. They didn't really tell me they was gonna redshirt me until probably closer to the end of the year, and it was like, yeah, we got 5 games left and you got 4 to play until you redshirt, and that's what I just kept getting. So I was kind of frustrated. It kind of motivated me to come in this next year and make sure I really played as a redshirt freshman into my my sophomore year. I really wanted to get out there on the field because I hadn't played football. That's the first time I hadn't played in a game in who knows how long. I played every year up until 2 years ago, so I was very frustrated and wanted to just go out there and play the next year.
Well, the next year you went off. I feel like that there's no other way to put it than you just went off. Freshman All-American, All-CAA third team, and an All-CAA football honorable mention as well. And so it's like, as you were going through this redshirt season and you were just going through practice, it's definitely not as fun as if you were being able to play those games. But how did you see your overall game develop during that redshirt year when you were just constantly putting in reps in practice and getting time to more or less, I guess, focus and develop your own game without the pressure of having to truly perform during each snap that you're on the field?
So we had a new wide receiver coach. He was an OC at a different school, but he played wide receiver, so he really just like embedded in our minds, the importance of being a wide receiver. So I really honed in on what he was telling us. My high school coach, he would call me like, you got to take every day like you're trying to become the starter again, which is what I did. I went out there every day in practice. Even now I try to go 110% every day in practice because you never know when the last snap is for you. So I was just really motivated going into that year, and I knew like I got to be consistent in order to get a role this year because we had a lot of wideouts return last year. So in order to be on that field, you have to be consistent and you got to make plays, and that's just what happened.
And going into your redshirt freshman year, they had a pretty solid wide receiver core. Were there how was that room like working with those guys? And were there guys that you looked up to in terms of guys that you tried to maybe not model your game after, but sort of model how you go about going through this program, like putting in the work and getting the reps in practice and so on and so forth in order to stay ready for when your name and number were ultimately called during the year?
So the moment I stepped on campus, Quintero, he was the first person to like, yo, I got you, like you're under my wing. Like that was straight off the rip. So he was someone I always looked at. I always watched how, Darius Savage, like he went about his business. He wasn't a quiet guy. He didn't talk the most, but he went out there and did everything he could to play. Quintero he was a very like before the game type of guy. He took everything serious. He made sure he broke a sweat. He made sure he's stretching good. So those are two guys I really looked up to my first 2 years when I was here because just the way they went about their business was very inspiring for me to try to get my business straight.
And so during your redshirt freshman year, I mean, just kind of like walk me through how this season transpired for you, because you ended up playing in 11 games. You got 638 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. You're starting to really make a name for yourself. And like I said, you were a Phil Steele FCS All-American, Phil Steele All CAA third team. Ended up being named to as an honorable mention All CAA from the conference. And so after going through that redshirt year, being able to be like, all right, you know what? Now I can show everybody what I can do and that I can play. Just as the season was transpiring and you're starting to get more and more reps on the field, just how were you feeling as you were going through the year?
So the first game I was nervous. Obviously, you don't really know if you're gonna play that first game. But once I got my first snap in, I was like, all right, I'm gonna get some reps today. I kind of just went out there and played football. Really, that's really just what I was out there doing. The first couple of games, I was just out there playing football, trying to get my feet wet, in the college life. But as the season went on, I kind of just started to begin getting more and more confidence. Because teams started trusting me more and more as I made more plays, and having those two on the outside, really helped a lot. So if I didn't know something, they was right there to tell me, and vice versa. So I really just had to stay focused because the playbook's a mess, insane. But really just staying focused throughout the season. I just kept going to work every day and knowing that there's other dudes behind me that want this spot. I just gotta keep it really just how it went. When I knew I tried to become a starter, and once I became the starter, I really just wasn't trying to get the job back after that.
And as you started to get more reps, you start going through the playbook more, studying the playbook. How big of a jump was it from high school studying the playbook to college? I mean, you talk about how it seems to be super chaotic and that there's just so much going on. Did you have any difficulty at first when you were trying to get through and making sure that you knew all the right calls and all the right routes?
So that spring of my redshirt freshman year, I really did. That's when I really learned the playbook. I learned everything, every position, what everybody was doing going into the fall camp. So it was a great transition. Coach Projeski was a great teacher for us, so he really taught me the whole playbook, basically. But even in season, we switched so many things around. Just try to make stuff look different, but run the same play. So you really just got to focus throughout the whole week going into the game because anything could change really.
And going back, looking at some of the highlights from your redshirt freshman year, you had over 100 receiving yards in that first game versus Georgia State, and that got your first touchdown pass career of your career as well against an FBS program. Just that game, getting those reps in, obviously you didn't start the game, but how was that to you an indication for how the rest of the season was going to go, knowing that you were able to make such an impact off the bench so quickly?
I just knew that teams weren't really game planning for me, so when I come in, I just got to make a big play when they come my way. So that first catch, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a statement. I just so happened to score. That was really the goal for me, to just be that big play threat coming off the sideline that they're not really prepared for.
And how big of an advantage is that, just from a team perspective, to have assets like yourself, to where a lot of these teams may not necessarily prepare or scheme for some of the guys coming off the bench? And I mean, for you, do you come off the bench just being like, all right, these guys, with a chip on your shoulder, these guys don't know what they're getting into? Or are you just kind of sitting there being like, all right, you know what? Let me show them what I got?
Coming off the sideline is a major advantage, really, especially the first game. When you haven't played, they have nothing for you. So, as the season went on, teams obviously prepare a little bit more, but still not really. When you have Katero and Darius on the outside, they're not prepared for you. So when I came on the sideline, it was kind of just do your job and make a play when it comes your way. And that was really it. Every time I came to the sideline, just go out there and make a play and try to stay on the field even longer.
And so then, as you started to get more reps as the season continued, did you start to notice the opposing DBs start to gravitate a little bit more towards you as you started to put up more significant receiving yards and started to get more touchdowns? I mean, because you got your first career start versus Brown on October 7th, got your first touchdown. At that point, though, you had multiple games with over 100 receiving yards. So when you step onto the field, do you notice any sort of chatter when you're trying to gauge what the field's looking like? Do you notice any DBs pointing you out more, being like, hey, you got to watch this now?
Not as much as I would have thought, but because we had Katero, who's an all-CAA player, it's not really. It wasn't as much as I would have thought. So that's why I was still able to get so many 180 plus yard games because it wasn't really. They were so focused on him and the running back Jaden McKenzie who was 13 touchdowns. They were so worried about him. It wasn't really honed in on me, which I think helped me even more. So not as much as I would have thought.
And obviously, if any Rhode Island fan knows just how much of a turnaround this program has gone through over the past few seasons, and you being a Rhode Island native, you must have been aware of that as well. Just as your season progresses and you're continuing to get reps alongside such talented offensive weapons like you mentioned in Quintero and Jaden, what was it like just kind of being a part of that offensive core, which was really one of the first true almost juggernauts that Rhode Island has produced in years? Because obviously in 2023 you guys weren't able to make the playoffs. It was by narrow margins. But that was still one of the first true times that Rhode Island has made it to that point under Coach Fleming. And so just to be a part of that offensive unit, one of the first ones in decades that Rhode Island has really been able to produce, just what was that like for you as a redshirt freshman?
I mean, it was an amazing feeling because we had all the older guys. We had Kasim, all our offensive linemen. They was all older. It was all seniors. So knowing like they just had the experience, just be on the field and have the experience in the playbook, it made everything easy for me. And it was just great for us to go out there and put up as many points as we did. And we knew we was a playoff team. Obviously, we had our own like internal issues. We left some stuff on the field. Some games, there were games we should have won, but it just ultimately didn't happen. Looking back at it, like that's definitely a team that should have gone a long way in the playoffs.
And when you look back on that season, and there was 2022 as well, but I mean, also looking back at just 2023 in particular, are there any games that you yourself look back on that you're like, wow, that was an exceptional game to be a part of, and in terms of your own personal performance or even just how the overall team played? And then on the flip side, were there any games that you look back on that it's just like, wow, I really wish that we were able to do something differently? Like one of those games where it's like, that should have gone a different way.
So like atmosphere-wise, I would definitely say Minnesota, Delaware, and then the first two playoff games. Delaware, that crowd was insane. Like even like to be on the road, we played well as a team. We definitely left some stuff on the field. A bad holding call, a drop by me, defensive play here and there, but that was a great atmosphere to play at. It really just like I was like one of the few big crowds on the road that we've had all year. And then that first playoff game against CCSU was just insane. I haven't heard a roadie crowd like that in a little while, so it was kind of crazy. And then Mercer, their fan section was right behind us, so we kind of was just hearing it all day long. And in terms of like going back at it, I would say definitely Mercer, that last offensive play. There was a call in my head. I thought, but I thought the call he made, Coach Murph had made, was gonna go our way, and just didn't. But it was a couple games we left some stuff on the field definitely that we wish we could go back and change.
And you talked about the Central Connecticut game, first home playoff game in nearly 40 years, and really just exemplified the overall atmosphere that Rhode Island football has had around it this entire season. I mean, multiple sellouts at Meade Stadium this year. As someone who's on the field consistently in 2024, looking up at the crowd, knowing just how much the fans have now started to care about Rhode Island football and the amount of fans that packed into Meade Stadium every Saturday this season, just what was that like now, seeing that gradual increase over the past couple seasons from fans? You had a great deal of rowdy fans in 2022 and 2023, but there has been a significant progression to where we see now, where it's just consistent sellouts at Meade Stadium. Just being able to watch that and seeing all of these fans come out to support you guys, just what has that meant to you?
I mean, it's a great deal to me. That means we're doing something right. We just got to keep winning, and when I see a big crowd out there, it makes me want to play even better. I like hearing the crowd explode during a big play. So as long as they keep coming out, we can just keep doing what we're doing. As long as we continue to win, they'll keep coming out, and pretty soon they're gonna have to make more space for the fans if we just keep winning like this.
Oh, and absolutely. I mean, that's kind of a part of their plan. The Meade Stadium's looking to get updated over the next couple of years. They've got all of those renderings that we've all seen. They look pretty good. I'm very excited to see what this stadium really looks like, because having playoff games can completely change the outlook of a program, just because that gets that extra nationwide notoriety and really helps boost the overall brand of the program. And so before we kind of get into the Central Connecticut game, because that's a story in and of itself, I want to talk about more just this season, because your redshirt freshman year, you're starting to get significant reps, but you're not starting every game yet. But this year, that all completely changed. You played all 14 games this season. You had over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. Just another step forward in your overall progression as a football player. Between last season to now, what were some of the key differences that you saw in your own game that led you to get to this point?
I know it had to be way more physical. You know, the guys last year, they were way bigger bodies than what we had this year, but I knew like I had to get more physical. You know, especially because I thought I was gonna play more outside, but things had changed. But you know, I had to step up leadership wise. I knew I was gonna be the guy, but I also had to show every week why. You know, they put that faith in me. Coach Flem had gave me number one. He had gave me that ability to wear it, so I know I had to go out there and prove him right. And that was really just the focus, just go out there and be dominant every week.
And so then, as a Rhode Island native, knowing that you're now in this position to where you're going to be one of the key starters every week, playing for the flagship university in Rhode Island, just what did that mean to you on a personal basis, knowing that so many fans are coming out to see and support you as essentially one of their own? Because Rhode Island football has brought in a great deal of local talent from South County and from Northern Rhode Island, from Providence, Smithfield, etc. But to me, a lot of the attention has really gravitated towards you, because it's one of the stars from Providence being able to come down and make such a significant impact. Just what has that attention and what have those plaudits from fans meant to you?
It means a great deal. It means that like they kind of just got faith in me, and then I embrace it really. You know, being from here, I just like putting on a Rhode Island jersey, having their kids look up to me. It means a great deal. It means I got to continue to be a great person on the field, be a great person off the field in the classroom, and keep dominating on the field and keep just putting on for my city and the rest of the state.
And that support was really shown more later on during the season. I mean, it was unfortunate to hear about what happened for you back home, your house back up in Providence, and to see that and see the Rhode Island community come together with the GoFundMe that went out for to help repair and help you guys rebuild your house after the fire. Just that sort of support. I know Coach Flem talked about that you didn't really want to tell anybody about it, or you were trying to keep it to yourself, that you as a family were going to try and figure it out in your own way. And just seeing all of those people come out and support you and really try to help you guys rebuild. I mean, were you surprised at all by the amount of people that wanted to help support?
Yeah, a little bit. I kind of like Coach Flem said, I was trying to keep it to myself, show you what I do. I call Coach Loft, just let him know what happened, and I was just going to be home for the weekend. So it kind of didn't get to Coach Flem until about like Tuesday. You know, he was kind of upset that I didn't tell him. I was just keeping it on the wraps, just figure it out how we usually do. But, we got it out there, and it was a great deal of support from the alumni. I knew we'd get support. I didn't know we'd get as much as we did. So, it means a whole lot to me that they was able to support us as much as they did. And to this day, I still don't know how I can repay them for, all the donations and stuff that they gave us.
I think the easiest way that fans would say you can repay them is just what you continue to do on the field every weekend, and it's just putting up receiving yards. And just looking at your overall stats from this season, you really just picked it up and went into overdrive and showed out with those consistent starting reps. And just throughout this season, how do you feel that you developed once again? Because now you're going from last season where you're not starting every game, you're getting those reps in off the bench, but you're still behind a lot of those senior wide receivers, still trying to learn from them and make your own name at the same time. But now you're the number one option in one of the most potent offenses that Rhode Island has ever put together, and you're now starting to get consistent reps, and with those reps, you're able to really enhance a lot more of those skills. And so, I mean, just how do you feel that you developed over the course of this season now getting more minutes, getting more reps, and making more catches?
Um, just being patient and consistent, really. Patient, knowing we had 8 new starters come in, so it wasn't gonna be sunshines and rainbows off the rip. Patient in like the first couple games. We started off slow, or like me myself, I had some slow games, and being consistent, just being in the right spot, catching the ball when it's thrown my way, and then on the sideline, just keeping those guys motivated because those guys obviously, a lot of them are brand new, first time in starting roles. So I kind of just had to be the leader since I was like one of the vets, I guess you can say, even though it was only my sophomore year. But I was the guy in the offense that knew the whole playbook, and I kind of just had to make sure everybody had their head on straight. But definitely being consistent and patient is what I developed this year, definitely.
And with all of those new transfers coming in, I mean, there was a lot of speculation about how this team was going to look in 2024 with so many seniors graduating from last year. I mean, you're graduating the quarterback, you're graduating a lot of the wide receivers, you're graduating a lot of members of the offensive and defensive line. With all of those transfers coming in, I would imagine that this season defied some of your expectations in terms of what you thought may have been possible for this team. But just based off of what you saw during summer camp and how these transfers got going and how fast or how slowly they got up to speed in terms of getting used to this playbook, how did this season relate to the expectations that you set out earlier in the year?
So when the schedule had came out, obviously everybody looks at the schedule and compare, it was the games I was like, all right, we can make this run, like we can do it. Obviously the run, like it didn't go how we expected. The offense starting off slow and picking up, like that was most of our games. Like we didn't expect it to go like that, but we knew we could win a lot of games this year, and to go out there and win a lot of games, we wanted some of them to be blowouts. We made some of them closer than what they needed to be. But the fact that we was winning and we knew we could win these games is what so there weren't really no surprises. The only thing that surprised me was like how we was winning, but we knew we could win the games that we won.
And talk to me about the Bryant game, because it's the very end of the season. You guys are in a position to win your first conference title ever. And like we talked about earlier, being from Rhode Island, this program has not been in a position where they could even really contend for a conference title. And so to be in that position against a hated in-state rival and to win the conference championship, or co-conference championship, excuse me, what was that overall game like for you in the lead up, knowing what was at stake, knowing the opponent you're going up against, and then ultimately when the game finally ended, just what were your feelings like once you hoisted the silverware?
That week we was ultra focused all week. That was like one of our better weeks of practice. We knew that a game against Bryant, one bad slip up and they can take off. So we kind of just really focused up going into the game. We were, it was a cold game, but everybody was just like, we're gonna have to play anyway. So we was ultra focused. We went out there, and everybody was just confident. Like no matter how the game went, we knew we was confident. And then once the final horn sounded and we hoisted the trophy, it was an amazing feeling. Coach Flem worked a long time for this. The seniors worked a long time for this. So we kind of just we was just celebrating there. We was there for about an hour and a half afterwards, just taking pictures, celebrating with each other. It was a great feeling for the program and for us as a team.
And to know that it took so much hard work throughout the season to get to that point, because I mean, I feel like that you'd be able to attest to this more than anybody. It seems that you guys were much more of a second half team than many fans may have thought going into this season, just with how a lot of games really transpired, with Devin and the rest of you guys on offense sort of growing into the game slowly during the first quarter, quarter and a half, let's say, and then really kicking into gear during second quarter and then after halftime. Just as the season progressed, did you guys notice that and try to work on trying to limit that? Or was that something that you essentially embraced, knowing that, all right, if we're not able to really get the ball going the way we want to in the first half, we know that we're still going to be able to kick it into gear because we are capable of competing with every team that we're going up against?
We kind of just embraced it, really. Like, if we was losing at half or it was a close game at half, Coach Flem would just come in and be like, all right, it's our half. Like, yeah, we're a second half team. We're going to go out there and we're going to dominate the second half. And that's just what we did for most of the year. It's not really a plan, but we want every week, like, all right, we got to start off fast this week. And if it didn't happen, we go into halftime, like, all right, this is our half. We started out slow all year. This is just how the season's gone. Let's keep going how the season's been going. Let's go out there and dominate the second half. So it wasn't really a plan, and we just kind of started to embrace it.
And as the season progresses, you're getting all of these reps, but your quarterback changes. You and Devin, I imagine, have a pretty good relationship, considering that Devin is obviously one of the younger guys on the roster too. But once he goes down with a season-ending injury and Hunter comes in, the backup, just what were your conversations like with him? Because I imagine, as being one of the top wide receivers of the program, you're trying to make sure that Hunter is coming in ready. He understands what's at stake, but he also knows that, hey, like, you're in this position for a reason. Like, you know the playbook. Like, this is, you got this. You're comfortable. Just what were some of those moments like when he was told that he was going to be starting for the rest of the season? And as the games were going on where he's playing, what were some of those conversations like to make sure that you guys were still on the same page and able to perform at the best of your ability?
You just got to keep him confident in himself and his ability to play the game. You know, he played at Clemson. He's seen the high stakes games. You know how they can be. So I was confident in him. You know, so all I had to tell him was like, yo, just make your throws, play football. Like, don't overthink nothing. Just play football how you know how to play football. Because obviously we brought you here for a reason. So just go out there and play football. That's really it. There's not too much you can really have to say to Hunter. You know, he's always ready. He's always ultra focused. So I kind of just had to keep his confidence up. That was really it.
And keeping his confidence up was definitely something needed going into the playoffs, because he was then going to be starting the first career playoff game of his career, but then first playoff game that Rhode Island has had since the 80s. And going into that Central Connecticut game, I got to imagine that the pressure and just the overall feeling that you guys felt had to have been so much different than what you felt before. And I mean, you go through the selection show. Rather, you know what? Talk about the selection show first. That experience must have been awesome, because you've seen that on TV, knowing how close you guys got the past 2 seasons. To hear Rhode Island's name called during that show, being in that room with all of your teammates, just what was that feeling like for you once they said Rhode Island 10 seed going up against Central Connecticut?
That was a amazing feeling, really. You know, being in the last 2 years, sitting in the room and not seeing our names called, but that was an amazing feeling for the guys. You can really see everybody get excited, start dapping each other up, hugging each other up. It was a great feeling for us as a program to really finally hear Rhode Island as a playoff team.
And so then how quickly did that jubilation and that happiness turn to, okay, we have to lock in now. This is a very different atmosphere. This is a different sort of level that we haven't been to before, and we really have to make sure that we limit any and all mistakes. At what point did that transition from being as happy as possible to, all right, the pressure's on, this is what we've been working towards, we have to make sure we really connect on our goals here and make sure that we get this done?
So for the players, we kind of just celebrated through Sunday, really, until about Sunday night. Everybody went home. Obviously, you know, start focus. The coaches went up right after, you know, they seen just to get some film and start seeing who's who. But for us, it really started on Monday. We went to the film room, and that's when it really started for us.
And then playing that home playoff game against Central Connecticut, the stadium's packed even during Thanksgiving break, and you're going up against Central Connecticut that many were surprised that they even made the playoffs. They were projected to finish bottom of the Northeastern Conference, but then they come in, they're a surprise package, just not in the same sense that Rhode Island is, but 2 surprise historic seasons for both of these teams. Going into the game at Meade Stadium, you're on the sideline, you're seeing all the fans there. What are your initial thoughts that you're telling yourself before you step out onto the field, knowing that this is the biggest game that you have taken part in your Rhode Island career?
Just taking a deep breath, taking it all in. Obviously, you never know if you can get back to the playoffs. It's a long season. It's a hard grind. So just taking it all in the best I can and really just trying to stay focused. Obviously, we was undefeated at home, so we really didn't want to lose at home at all, which we ended up not doing. So we knew we had to go out there and play our best.
And that game was definitely stressful. I mean, you go out, you start your first quarter, you're up 14-0, But Central Connecticut are in there. They're still trying to make it as difficult as possible and then ultimately tie the game in the third quarter. And so as this game's sort of transpiring, what's the team feeling like? What's the sideline feeling as this game sort of progresses to where it's not as easy as some may have hoped? And who's stepping up in this situation, being like, okay, guys, no, we're still us. We've got this. Like, we're still in this position. We're supposed to be here. These are the sort of trials and tribulations that you're supposed to face in this position.
I mean, we was kind of calm on the sideline. We knew, like, this is just how our season's been going. Like, we can never just pull away from a game. It's just how it's been. So we wasn't really nervous for people that were stepping up. It was really just Devin. Dev, he was hurt, and he was still on the sideline saying, like, yo, like, we're good. Like, we're fine. Like, we're going to make a play, and we're going to go out and win the game. So we was never really nervous throughout that whole game. Obviously, we wanted the game to go differently, but it's just how it went.
And then just overall, as the game goes on, you break the 1,000-yard mark. And it's the first time in URI history that a wide receiver and a running back have over 1,000 yards rushing, receiving in program history. With the win, because we'll get to how that game ended in a moment, but with the win and hitting the 1,000-yard mark for this season, the first time in your career, that must have been an unbelievable moment for you. Did you realize it at the time, or was it something that you heard after the play had finished, or were you just locked in on the game?
I didn't even know I got it until after the game. And during the game, I didn't even think I had it. Like, going in, I needed 19 yards, so I didn't even think I had it. I kind of wanted to get it against Bryant because I needed 19 yards coming out of halftime, but the game kind of didn't play out like that. Going into the game, I didn't think I had it, so I was kind of just out there playing football. Coach Murphy came up to me after the game and said I got it, so I wasn't too happy after the game just because of how bad we played on offense. But we won. I got the 1,000 yards. It was a good celebration afterwards.
And so then the game ends in dramatic fashion. Wesley Niels Jr.'s first career interception. I mean, that must have sent you guys into a frenzy, seeing the big man come down with that ball, knowing that sealed the first playoff win that Rhode Island has had in decades upon decades. I mean, just after that play goes dead and you guys get that breath of fresh air, that realization, knowing that you're moving on to go play Mercer. I mean, just at that point, the celebrations must have been off the charts.
Yeah, everybody was up and happy and joyful. We was all standing up watching the defense, do what the defense does. They have been making clutch stops all year, and they got a tip ball, and of course the captain comes down with the pick. So it was an amazing feeling. Everybody was flooding the field, celebrating, hugging, and we just knew, we got another chance to play football again.
And for you, it wasn't the strongest game. Obviously, you hit the 1,000 yards, but it wasn't the best game for you, the best game for the offense in general. After the celebrations, you're going into Mercer. At that point, what were you taking from that Central Connecticut game to try and apply it into the Mercer game, knowing that, all right, we're hitting uncharted territory now. We have to be better. This is what we're going to do to be better.
Just got to take advantage when the ball comes your way, really. There was a couple plays that we had left out of the field once again. The ball thrown my way wasn't completed. So I knew going into Mercer, like, no matter how they played me, whatever ball's thrown my way, I got to come up with it because you don't know how many targets you're going to get that day. So you really just got to take advantage where you could, especially in a game like Mercer. You don't know if that's your last game or not. So you just take advantage of everything that comes your way.
And, I mean, you clearly took advantage. 11 receptions, 119 yards, and a touchdown. Just as that game's transpiring, probably difficult to think back on it now, knowing that it did not go your way, and many fans are probably sitting there wondering how it possibly couldn't have gone you guys' way, just with how some of the officiating went and just how the way Mercer is shaped up. Just looking back on that game, obviously difficult to take the loss, but knowing that you had the performance that you did and really showed up after a difficult game versus Central Connecticut, how did you feel about that game personally based on your own performance?
I thought I played extremely well. I caught almost every pass thrown my way, so I made the big plays when needed. Personally, I felt like I played an all-around good game. I feel like it was one of the better games. I played all around, not just catching the ball, blocking-wise, leading on the sideline-wise, that I could play all season.
And though it ended poorly, looking back on 2024 as a whole with the history and everything that was involved with it, just what were your reflecting thoughts on this year, just as with where the program is come and what could possibly be left for this program to continue growing. Because now that you've got this framework of how to make the playoffs, and Rhode Island has now asserted themselves as a team that wants to contend for the playoffs season after season, based off of the historicness of this year, what do you think yourself, the other players that aren't moving on this offseason, and the coaches can take away from this season to help improve next year?
Just figure out what we struggled with and kind of just improve off that. I felt like we practiced hard every day. Like everything was like a game day atmosphere for us. So you kind of just got to take what you can improve on. Whether that's players, coaches, like the structure of lifts or practice. But overall, you really just got to just got to look back at what we struggled with and how can we improve on it as a team.
And then for you, this is obviously a very interesting time of year. Once the season sort of ends, you have the transfer portal and guys hopping in, guys coming to join URI, new faces coming and going. For you, you're in an interesting position because your stock is at an all-time high, and you have the ability to throw your name out in the ring to see what sort of offers that you may get. Have you had any conversations about what your future in Kingston may look like? And considering that you're a Rhode Island native, considering all of the marketing abilities that URI has with you and other athletes at URI like Sebastian Thomas, has that decision and conversations been like for you personally?
I've really just been like sitting on it. Really, just been thinking. I've had a couple of conversations with Coach Flem. Talked to Coach Flanagan. Talked to Coach Loftus. Obviously, it's kind of just been some back and forths. Nothing like concrete, but I should have an answer within the next day or two. So, but I have had conversations with Coach Fleming about what's going on next season and what the future holds.
All right. Well, certainly fans will be interested to see what that decision is. I know that plenty would be sad to see you transfer out, but you never know. I mean, AJ hopped in the portal last year, but he ultimately decided to come back to URI. So you never know with what this portal looks like and how the college landscape has evolved over the past few seasons. But regardless, you had an unbelievable year. You've clearly made an impact, a lasting impact, and have forged a bit of a legacy here at URI, and I commend you for that. I mean, you balled out this year. So I'm very, very proud and very happy to be having you on the show to talk about all of this. But, I mean, Marquis, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today, and, I mean, just congratulations on all the success that you had this season, and good luck for everything that is going to be coming up for you in the next couple of weeks, days, months, and whatever football, the college football journey continues for you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here. I appreciate, all the support you guys gave us throughout the season. It's great.
Yeah, of course. And to everybody listening at home, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we're going to start to get a little bit more stories from this historic football program over the next few weeks now that the season has concluded. So just follow along on Instagram and Twitter at MarksRemarksPod for all the latest updates, and we'll catch you in the next one.